Hello, everyone, and welcome to the initial episode of 75.30, a podcast on the impact of Fulbright exchanges between the United States and Lithuania. In 2021, Lithuania joins over 160 countries around the world to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the Fulbright Program and its global impact. Lithuania joined the Fulbright Program in 1992, so in 2022, we will also be celebrating 30 years of U.S. Lithuanian Fulbright exchanges. We've created this podcast to bring you real stories of how the Fulbright Program impacts Lithuania and Lithuanians. My name is Caitlyn Nettleton, and I am your host. I'm the Assistant Public Affairs Officer at the U.S. Embassy in Vilnius, Lithuania. I'm also a Fulbright alumna myself. I went to Turkey in 2013 on a U.S. student study research program. We're joined live today at the Martynas Mažvydas Library Studio by Austė Valinčiūtė, a Fulbright alumna and former president of the U.S LT Alumni Association. Welcome, Austė.
Thank you, Caitlyn. Hello to everyone.
How are you doing today?
I'm very good, thanks.
It's so nice to be with you. This is for both of us our first podcast, correct?
Yeah.
Awesome. So why don't we get started? If you could just tell us a bit about yourself. Where are you from? What are you up to now?
Sure. Well, first question, where I'm from. I'm from Vilnius, from Lithuania. I was born here. Lived here for a considerable part of my life, but not all of it. Currently, I am a lecturer at the Department of Media and Journalism Studies at the University of Groningen in the Netherlands, and I'm also a researcher and lecturer at Vilnius University Faculty of Communication. And my area of research is science communication. So I study how people react to science, to scientific knowledge, to technological innovations, why they react to science sometimes the way that they do, for example, why they reject scientific knowledge or technological innovations, and what the role of communication is in building, a cohesive relationship between science and society and building more mutual understanding between experts and the public.
You must be really busy right now with COVID-19 and everything that's going on.
It's quite a busy time. It's a very interesting time, for sure.
Absolutely. So we're here to talk about Fulbright and some of the amazing experiences you've had on the program and after. Can you tell us what sort of program you did and where were you in the United States and what did you research when you were in the United States?
Yeah. So actually, I did the Fulbright Foreign Student Program. And that gave me, because when I got the grant, I was a PhD student here at Vilnius University, and the Fulbright grant gave me an opportunity to go to the U.S. for one academic year, so to complete 1 year of my PhD studies at a U.S. university. And so I went to the Department of Life Sciences Communication at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, which was an amazing experience that I'm very happy that I get the chance to, remember it and talk about it again today. Super exciting for me. And what I did there was, I worked a lot on my PhD dissertation, of course. My PhD dissertation was focused on understanding 10 years of public attitudes about vaccines in Lithuania and 10 years of mass media coverage about vaccines in online news. So, of course, I was working on constructing my research study, but also on a few side research projects that were relevant to my dissertation as well.
That sounds so interesting. I think we'll have to do an entirely different episode again on kind of vaccines and disinformation, because it sounds like you've been working on that for quite some time, or vaccines and information and how it's covered. So before we dive into more specific experiences of yours, what inspired you to choose the Fulbright program in the first place?
Mm-hmm. Well, I was thinking about it quite a lot, and I think that one of the things that really drove me to apply to this program, for this grant, was a really big urge to learn, a desire to learn, to build my knowledge, to gain new skills. And Fulbright offers a unique opportunity, both for experienced and young scholars as well, students as well. It's a very unique opportunity, right, to go to the U.S. for, let's say, 6 months to a year and develop professionally and to gain new skills.
That's a wonderful overview of the program, really. And before you went to Wisconsin, what were your expectations? What did you expect to find or think you would find before you arrived?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, actually. When I went to the U.S. and when I went to Wisconsin, it wasn't my first time there. I actually lived in the U.S. for a relatively long time. When I was young, in 1999, my dad started working at the National Institute of Standards and Technology in Gaithersburg, Maryland. So, of course, the whole family, moved there. And yeah, I went to elementary school there. I went to middle school. And before we knew it, I was the typical American kid. At least I felt that way, So what I mean by that is that I always felt a very, close emotional connection to the country, and I felt that I really, really understood what it is about culturally. So in a very general sense, I kind of knew what I was gonna find, but I think that my expectations were really centered around being in the Midwest for the first time because I had never visited it before, and I was super fascinated with the Midwest. I don't know why. I mean, some people dream about going to New York, some people dream about going to California. I was dreaming about going to Iowa, right, and seeing what it looks like, because to me, I don't know, Midwest seems like really the heart and soul of the United States. For quite a long time, I was hearing a lot of these stories about what it was like growing up in the 1940s and the 1950s there. So I had this, image of what Wisconsin and the surrounding states will look like, and boy was I wrong. That was the interesting part of the expectations, because when I arrived in Madison, it was a really modern city. I mean, it looked more like Washington D.C. than what I imagined Wisconsin would look like, because it even has its own Capitol building. So yeah, it was super vibrant. It was full of, students, and nothing like I expected, but it was really nice. My first impression was, I really like it.
That's amazing. You said that, you liked it a lot when you got there, but was there any time at the beginning of your exchange where you felt particularly foreign?
It was a bit difficult at first, of course, to get acquainted, with this new city, with this new state, and how things work there. But pretty soon after I arrived, I went to my university, just to check in, just to say hello, hi, I'm here. And the coordinator that I met, she said that, oh, Austė, well, your supervisor is actually here today. Do you want to meet him? But I went up to his office. We had a super nice conversation. And, I felt really, really at home, because the environment was so welcoming that you didn't really feel foreign at all.
That's great. Is there a specific time in your experience where you felt that you had really acclimated to this new culture, to this new place? Can you describe a situation and how it made you feel?
For me, I feel the most acclimated to a place when I know people there, right? When I have friends, when I build my social circle. So I think that as time went, as those social relationships was built, which was pretty quick because everyone was so friendly. So probably then, probably at that time, when we just started, working together, interacting a bit more.
Okay. And is there something that you want to share that you learned about yourself or your country or your culture while living abroad? And again, you've talked about how, you spent a lot of time in the U.S., but for our Lithuanian audience, is there anything that you learned kind of about your Lithuanian background when you were in the United States?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you ask what I learned about myself, for example, definitely, we would need a few more hours to talk about that. No, because every experience like that, it is a major moment of growth for everyone, I think. And since you're there, usually, a bit alone. You have a lot of time, for introspective discussions with yourself. And that, of course, leads to new understandings, always. But the question of what I learned about my country, that's actually a good question, because when I went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison library, which, by the way, was unlike anything I've ever seen in my life. I mean, the size of that library is I don't even know a word in the English language to describe it. I remember thinking that, my goodness, I think it was open 24/7. If you would be there alone at night, it would be so scary, because it's just infinite. It never ends, But when I went to that library, I actually picked up a book by Upton Sinclair called The Jungle. Yeah. It was quite a controversial book at the beginning of the 20th century in the U.S. And as you know, the neighboring state of Illinois and Chicago was and still is a major point of immigration for Lithuanians to the U.S. And that book, it actually tells the story of a Lithuanian immigrant family coming to the U.S. in search of a better life, in search of in the hopes of living the American dream, and it actually focused on the life experiences of those people, of coming to a new country, of settling in, of trying to find a job. But that really sort of made me learn a lot of new things, and at least, reflect and think about that moment in history and the experience of those many, many families that took that trip from Lithuania to the U.S.
Can you talk about a time when you had an assumption, a time during your exchange when you had an assumption that was proven wrong?
Oh, yeah. Well, for some reason, I was sort of always under the impression that, generally the U.S., all the states are the same. That wherever you go, it's very, very similar. But of course, my experience when I was living there, when I was a child, it was relatively narrow. It was mainly on the East Coast, right? That's the part of the U.S. that I got to know. And then when I went to Wisconsin, I was like, oh no, right? It is very different, right? And sometimes it can even feel that you travel to a different country, right? Even though you are in the same United States. So that's those differences between states, the culture, the diversity. The U.S. is not only diverse, within the states, but also across them as well. That was very that was very interesting to me.
That's really true, and that's something we talk a lot about at the U.S. Embassy, is trying to promote and have Lithuanians understand the diversity of the American experience. It's very wide. So what is one thing that you think the United States could learn from Lithuania, and one thing that Lithuania could learn from the United States?
It's hard to think of one. Well, I know one thing that Lithuanians can definitely learn from Americans. It's to smile more and to say I love you much more, right? That I really like about the American culture. No, but in all seriousness, the one thing that really fascinates me about the States and Americans is hope, right? This eternal hope that, good things are yet to come, and hope for their country, even, in the worst of times. So once again, it is very abstract, but it is something that I really associate with the United States, and something that really inspires me. And what can Americans or the U.S. Learned from Lithuanians? Once again, many, many, many things. One, maybe, I don't know, the beauty of living a more simple life, right? Where, let's say, you buy less, you use less, but you are nevertheless very, very happy. Yeah. So the beauty and simplicity.
That's wonderful. I love that. Can you describe a time on your exchange when you felt particularly proud?
So that is when I published my first research article, which I was working on during my time at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So that was really, that was a time when I was really proud of myself for doing it, It was challenging, it was difficult, but I put all of the knowledge and all of the skills that I gained in the U.S. and doing that, and it was a very proud moment for me.
That's very impressive. And how about a time when you laughed the hardest on your exchange?
A moment when I really remember laughing quite a lot was when I was telling my colleagues about how we left the U.S., and it was a very meaningful time for me, because when I was 13 or 14, my career aspirations were very, very different. I actually wanted to become a music superstar, a singer.
Who doesn't, right?
Yeah, totally. But I was so convinced that it's gonna happen, and at that time, I auditioned and I got a solo part to sing on Seasons of Love from Rent.
Whoa.
And I'm sorry, but in the career of an aspiring musician at 13 years old, that was a very meaningful moment in my life. But then we had to leave, and I didn't get to sing it, right?
Oh, no.
So we were just laughing at two things. One, that my parents just ruined my music career, and what was left, to do science.
Opposite direction.
Yeah, exactly. But I do remember that story. It went down really well. It was quite funny.
That's wonderful. And can you describe a time on your exchange when you said to yourself, wow, I wish my friends or family back home could see me now?
Yeah, well, this is not so difficult anymore with modern technology. You can just snap a picture and your whole family is there with you in the moment. And of course, I just kept in touch with my family and friends on a daily basis, because there were so many things that I just wanted to share day to day, so many things that I was learning and discovering. But maybe, just I'm thinking of this particular moment, which I was really hoping that my dad would see, was when, I asked my supervisor whether he can recommend, maybe a few articles or a few books that I could read, for the next few months. And he went to his office, and then he came back and he was like, do you read in German? And I was like, no, because he was German. And then he came back with this just huge stack of research papers. But I mean, and of course, listeners can't see what I'm showing, but it was like, I don't know, at least like 1 meter. Well, maybe a little less, but the pile was huge. And I was thinking, whoa, okay, so yeah, I definitely won't be wasting any time here for sure. And I kept wondering what the stack of papers would have looked like if I would have said I do read in German. but yeah, that was quite a funny moment that I remember sharing with my dad, and he was very excited that this is going to be a real academic experience for me.
Well, that's a good segue. I was going to ask. I mean, you spent 1 year at an academic institution, let's say higher education institution in the United States, because as you said, you spent plenty of time as a child in school. How do you feel that the higher education academic environment of the United States compared to that in Lithuania at the time?
Yeah, of course, it's very, once again, very difficult to compare, just because these academic institutions differ so much, both within and across countries as well. So maybe I can just describe what the academic environment was like, the things that really captured my attention and my curiosity. One thing was, of course, the complete, lack of hierarchy, right? So everyone is equal, right? You don't need to, refer to, let's say, a professor by, his or her 5 titles to show respect, mm-hmm. right? Everyone calls each other by their first name, and that is a very simple example. Simple illustration of the environment of let's say the familiarity, let's say between colleagues, but it is a good indicator that the environment is very, very friendly, right? It is very casual. Everyone, everyone is important, right? Everyone, even the most, the youngest colleagues, everyone has respect and everyone is very, very valued. The other thing was teamwork, just incredible teamwork, right? This understanding that, any task that you could do, if you do it in a team, right, it will be so much better. So the value of teamwork was really, really prominent, really, evident in that academic environment where I was. Interdisciplinarity, right? So the research team where I got to spend my academic visit, it was composed of a lot of different researchers, different students with each having their own expertise in let's say a slightly different but related area. And then the fourth thing is openness to people, openness to ideas, right? Openness to challenges. And all of these elements, right, they create a very, very good whole.
Yeah. Well, you paint a beautiful picture. I certainly enjoyed my time in college, and I think, in college we say in the United States, it might also mean university. But I really enjoyed, in particular, what you mentioned about people being equal and being comfortable with your professors and your fellow students and working on teams. I do think those are some of the things that capture a U.S. higher education experience pretty broadly. Yeah. And, speaking of kind of openness and equality and maybe even friendliness, can you describe a time during your exchange when you were the beneficiary of an extraordinary act of kindness?
Oh, yeah, that's actually, I like this question because when I came to Wisconsin, before going to Wisconsin, actually, I found out about this association. I think it's called Madison Friends of International Students, and it's a nonprofit association And the purpose of that association, actually, it is very, very simple. To help people make friends, right?
That's great.
And, on the one hand, to introduce the students who are coming from foreign countries to the residents of Madison, right? That they get the opportunity to meet these new people. And then, on the other hand, to help the students just understand, their new social and cultural environment a little bit better. And actually, I was put in touch with a family that agreed to host me for a few days. So they picked me up from the airport. They gave me, a place to stay for a few days. They, even helped me with these day-to-day things. Like they showed me where the food market was, like the food store. They helped me open up a bank account there. Right? These things that you really need to do once you're in a new country and you want to, settle in. And then I remember I was finding it so hard to find a place to live. I think that many international students can definitely relate to this. And they were going on holiday. And I was like, oh no, well, what am I going to do now? And I just remember them, saying, look, it's fine. You can stay at our house, while we're away. You can take care of our mail. And I was like, it really just... That was extraordinary, from their side, and I'm really grateful to them for all of their help during those, initial first days, which are both scary and exciting, and of course very challenging.
That is so wonderful. I'm so glad that they were so hospitable, and I think friendliness is definitely one of the characteristics that I think a lot about, especially when I think of the Midwest, where my whole extended family is from, even though I'm an East Coaster, so I also grew up, near Bethesda in D.C., but especially when I think of people from the Midwest that I know, that friendliness and that trust is really, really important. So when you turn on the radio here in Lithuania, or I don't know if you go on to Spotify or any sort of, music streaming, what is one song that will immediately take you back to your exchange? And can you describe maybe a memory? Yeah,
well, actually, it's both a very nice memory, but also maybe a little bit grotesque. I don't know. The song is actually Sitting on the Dock of the Bay by Otis Redding. Because it is a song that I remember from my childhood. My father used to sing it. I remember it playing on the radio. It just really sort of takes me back to my childhood. And this is a song that always, reappears in all of the playlists that I have. So in Madison, when I was, jogging every morning or every other morning, it would come on and it would play. And what I actually didn't know and found out a little bit later was that Otis Redding recorded that song just a few days before his plane crashed into the lake around which I was jogging.
Oh my gosh.
In Madison, Wisconsin. But also another song by Otis Redding, which is Try a Little Tenderness. And I do remember listening to it on very dark, snowy evenings in Madison, Wisconsin. We did get a lot of snow there, and it was just the perfect song to, to look at snowflakes falling to the ground.
Yeah, cozy around a fire. And yeah. So what about food? Do you have any crazy food stories, or one in particular that you could share?
Well, with all of my crazy food stories, they usually, especially from the States, they usually involved, like a spoon that I left in the microwave or something like that. So I think that's too crazy. But you know what? Maybe the story isn't so crazy, but something that I was really, really fascinated with, something that I really liked. My university had its own store, its own dairy store. It was selling its own cheese and selling its own ice cream. You know, you can buy a pint of, I don't know, mint chocolate chip with the University of Wisconsin logo, Badgers logo on it. That was pretty cool.
It's really awesome.
Yeah. So that is one thing that I definitely remember from there.
Wow. At UNC Chapel Hill, where I went to school, did not have that, but it's probably for the best since I do not run every day or every other day. So imagine that you're here in Lithuania and you never participated in your exchange, your Fulbright program. What is different? What are you missing?
So I think that, well, I mean, obviously, I would definitely be missing the one-of-a-kind knowledge that I gained there working with the people that I worked with. It is one of the best research teams in my area in the world. So of course, you know, you can't put a price on that, on the knowledge, right, that you gain being in an environment like that, the skills. But also, I think that I would be missing two very important things. One is motivation, because the environment that I was working in was extremely inspiring, right? So after I left, I was really, you know, I had a lot of hope and a very, you know, big vision of what I want to do now, and I was very inspired to do that. And the second thing is confidence, but not the arrogant type of confidence, not that, but the confidence in that, you know, if you have hopes, if you have goals, and if you put in a lot of work, things are possible. Right? You can really, without sounding cliche, you can achieve, you know, anything that you want to achieve. So yeah, probably that is the emotion, right? That is the feeling that I would be missing, and yeah, it is very important.
Absolutely hope, and yes, and knowing that if you work hard, that you can reap the rewards of that, I think is very important.
Yeah.
So, if you had to sum up, what would you say, or how has your participation in the Fulbright program helped you develop personally or professionally, or both, if you want to touch on that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that, you know, if we just talk about the Fulbright program itself, I think that what it did for me is it really, of course, it really matures you as a young scholar, as a, you know, I can't speak for let's say other participants, maybe, you know, professors that go on to do the Fulbright program in the U.S. But for me especially, yeah, it really matured me. It really, of course, I will repeat myself again, you know, knowledge and skills that were crucial, that are crucial for anyone in science, for any young researcher in science. But personally also, I think that, you know, as I mentioned previously, every experience like that, it really enriches you. And I think that it really sort of built my interpersonal communication skills, cross-cultural communication skills. And, you know, programs like these, and in particular the Fulbright program, it just helps you understand the world a little bit better.
Definitely. I absolutely agree. And you've mentioned specific skills, or you've mentioned skills and knowledge kind of more broadly. Can you point to a specific skill, or one or two, or a specific piece of knowledge that you think that you gained from the Fulbright program and perhaps now you use in your day-to-day activities?
Yeah. Again, very difficult to think of one. I think there were, you know, a lot of different perspectives through which I learned. One was teaching, of course, because I was also attending classes, not only, the classes that were run by my supervisor, but also my colleagues and other professors as well. So I was, looking at, well, how do they interact with the students, right? How are the classes set up? How are the discussions initiated? And when you're an observer, you can sometimes, see that very, very clearly. So that was a very important, skill, especially that, interaction with the students that I did take away with me and that I do apply in my own teaching as well. But, I also learned how academia works, right? And I will explain what I mean, because when I was with the research team, I was working with and in the department, I understood things such as, well, how are research projects set up, right? How are research projects discussed? How do you look at the data? How do you make insights about the data? How do you go on to write a research paper? How do you react to peer reviewer comments, right? These are super, they might seem like basic skills, but they're extremely important for any researcher. So I really got this, inside knowledge about how academia works. And that was very, very beneficial for me in the years that were coming.
Describe why, or why not, but I think in this case, why you became more optimistic as a result of your exchange.
Mm-hmm. I think I became more optimistic because I will probably repeat myself, but again, I understood that, things are possible. If you want to work with a good research team, they will accept you, right? Let's say in the context of the Fulbright program, of course you come, with the funding and everything. But if you want to learn from them, they will be welcoming, right? If you want to publish in a really good scientific journal, you can, as long as, you do the research well, as long as you, apply good methodology and make interesting insights. The academic world will accept you. So it gave me, it gave me a lot of hope. And hope is a fundamental for any career, I think, for any professional. So that really made me very optimistic.
That's wonderful. So I have two final questions. So let's start with, close your eyes, and when you think about your exchange, at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, what do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? And what do you taste?
Yeah, well, what do I see and what do I hear? Well, I definitely see the people that I was working with, because as I mentioned, one part, of course, is work and research, and you dedicate all of the time, most of the time to that. But then, of course, there is the social circle that you build over that, considerable amount of time that you spend there. So I definitely see the people, and I definitely remember, all of the wonderful conversations, both, academic and casual that we've had, the many times that we shared stories and laughed. What do I taste and smell? Ooh, that is a very difficult question, but I will just probably say the ice cream.
Yeah, it was mint chocolate chip ice cream.
Exactly.
That's a good thing to taste forever on. And my final question is really for our listeners. What would you say to anyone who is considering applying for a Fulbright program?
Yeah, if you only have the opportunity, right, to apply, if you have the possibility to, leave your home and go live abroad for a little bit, do apply, do try, to get this opportunity to apply for this program. It's unique, it's one of a kind, and the experience will be life-changing.
Thank you so much, Austė. It's been such a pleasure. We're so glad that you could be here with us today, and we're so thankful, as the U.S. Embassy, speaking on behalf of the Embassy, that you are such a wonderful partner, that your leadership of the U.S. LT Alumni Association was so strong, and best of luck in the Netherlands, and we look forward to welcoming you back to Lithuania and to continuing to work with you. To everyone out there, we hope you've enjoyed listening to 75.30 and our first episode, and please join us for the next time for more stories from real Fulbrighters about their Fulbright experience. Thank you. This podcast is made possible by close cooperation between the U.S. LT Alumni Association and the U.S. Embassy, and was funded by a grant from the United States Department of State. The opinions are those of the speaker and do not necessarily reflect those of the United States Department of State.